Hey friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon like thumbs up, share up right arrow, and subscribe red heart.
What happens ashamed? One of music's biggest icons walks a simulator allocution appearance expecting respect, alone to face a host determined to breach her bottom ward on animate television. This is the adventure of how Cher's appearance on The Daily Appearance became one of the best atomic moments in late-night television history. Before we dive into this absurd story, accomplish abiding to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about hosts who beyond the band with their guests. Cher absolved assimilate the set of The Daily Appearance that black with her usual confidence. The flat audience erupted in acclaim as she fabricated her way to the bedfellow chair, her appliqué jacket catching the flat lights. She had been on endless allocution shows over her decadesal-connected career. From Johnny Carson to Oprah, and she knew absolutely how these things usually went. A few softball questions about her latest project, some light badinage about her claimed life, maybe a funny adventure or two, and again she would be on her way. But Jon Stewart had altered affairs entirely. So Stewart began, almost cat and mouse for her to get acclimatized in her chair. I accept to ask, do you anytime get annoyed of actuality famous for, well, basically actuality acclaimed at this point? The admirers fell silent. This was not the balmy acceptable they had expected, and Cher's smile faltered for just a moment afore she recovered. I'm sorry. What absolutely do you beggarly by that? Cher asked, her articulation accustomed a slight bend that anyone who knew her well would accept as an admonishing sign. Stewart leaned ashamed in his armchair with a smirk that would become abominable in the clips that followed. Well, I mean, when was the aftermost time you absolutely had a hit song? Ashamed was the aftermost time you were in a cine that anyone absolutely saw. It seems like these canicule you're added known for your Twitter rants than your actual work. The admirers confused uncomfortably in their seats. This was declared to be entertainment, not an ambush. But Stewart was aloof accepting started. You apperceive what, John? Cher said, sitting up straighter. I've been in this business best than you've been alive. I've awash over 100 million annal worldwide. I've won an Academy Award, an Emmy, and a Grammy. What absolutely accept you accomplished besides authoritative jokes about other people's work? Oh, I see, Stewart replied, his articulation decrepit with mock surprise. So, we're declared to just ignore the actuality that your aftermost album barely absurd the top 50? We're supposed to pretend that your recent movie roles haven't been complete disasters? Appear on, Cher. At what point do you accept that maybe it's time to step abreast and let younger, more relevant artists booty centermost stage? The color rose in Cher's cheeks, but she maintained her composure. Years in the entertainment industry had accomplished her how to handle difficult interviewers. But Stewart's access was particularly aggressive, alike by backward night standards. Adolescent and added relevant, she repeated, her articulation getting stronger. You beggarly like the manufactured pop stars who can't sing without autotune? The ones who appoint teams of writers to actualize their alleged art. I've been autograph and assuming my own music back afore best of your viewers were born. And I'll be accomplishing it long after they balloon your name. Stewart laughed, but there was no action in it. That's affluent advancing from Audition whose biggest hit was a awning song. Acquaint me, Cher, how does it feel to apperceive that your most memorable moment in contempo years was acid antic accoutrements to an award show? Is that absolutely the legacy you want? The admirers was now clearly uncomfortable. Some bodies were looking around nervously. Others were whispering to their companions. This was not the light-hearted account they had appeared to see. And it was acceptable painfully obvious that Stewart was deliberately trying to abet his guest. You know what your botheration is, John? Cher said, leaning advanced in her chair. You think that actuality contemptuous and mean-spirited makes you clever? You anticipate that tearing down bodies who accept actually accomplished article makes you look important. But all it absolutely does is show anybody what a small, bitter little man you absolutely are. The studio fell absolutely silent. Alike Stewart seemed taken ashamed by the artlessness of her response, admitting he quickly recovered. Baby and bitter, he repeated, aggravating to achieve ascendancy of the interview. I'm not the one who spent the aftermost 20 years badly clinging to relevance. I'm not the one who keeps trying to anamnesis celebrity canicule that ended decades ago. Badly clinging to relevance. Shia's articulation rose slightly, admitting she still maintained her composure. I aloof accomplished a 3-year address in Las Vegas that sold out every distinct night. My last tour grossed over $180 million. Meanwhile, what do? You sit behind this board every night and mock people who are absolutely out there creating and performing. Ashamed was the last time you created Annihilation Original, Jon? Ashamed was the aftermost time you put yourself on the band for your art instead of ambuscade abaft your little jokes. Stewart's face ablaze red. He had clearly accepted Cher to be an easy target, addition who would beam off his comments or maybe accord him a few quotable complete bites. Instead, she was matching him draft 4-blow and accomplishing it with a rekin of ability that fabricated his attacks attending petty and unprofessional. At Atomic I'm honest about what I do, Stewart advanced back. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't put on elaborate apparel and lip-sync my way through concerts while charging people hundreds of dollars to watch lip-sync. Shia's articulation was now articulate with anger. You appetite to allocution about actuality honest. Let's be honest about what this interview absolutely is. You brought me on your appearance not because you're interested in accepting an absolute conversation, but because you anticipation you could get some cheap action at my expense. You thought you could annoy me in advance of your audience and I would aloof sit actuality and take it with a smile. The restriction in the studio was now palpable. You could hear a pin bead as she stared bottomward Stewart, waiting for his response. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was bound acceptable one of the best afflictive interviews in late-night television history. Stewart tried to beam it off, but his discomfort was obvious. Well, that's quite an accusation. Shia. I think your actuality a little batty here. This is aloof how interviews work. I asked boxy questions. Guests give honest answers. It's alleged journalism. Journalism? Shia repeated, her voice filled with disbelief. Is that what you call this ABCdarian our hit job? Real journalists do their research, Jon. They ask abreast questions that actually accord article to the conversation. What you're accomplishing is just cheap abridged nonsense dressed up with a fancy set and a flat audience. Oh, please. Stewart scoffed. Don't address me about journalism. You're a pop singer who thinks acid accoutrement and sequins qualifies as art. What would you know about austere discourse? The audience gasped audibly at this comment. Even Stewart's best loyal admirers seemed shocked by the arrant boldness he was showing his guest. But Shia didn't flinch. What would I perceive about austere discourse, she said slowly, her articulation dangerously calm. I've been speaking out about social issues aback you were in elementary school, Jon. I was fighting for LGBTQ rights ashamed it could have concluded my career. I was protesting wars, acknowledging veterans, advocating for healthcare reform. What except you done besides accomplish snarky comments from the assurance of your television studio? Stewart's jaw tightened. He was clearly losing ascendancy of the interview, and worse, he was accident the audience. People were starting to babble their disapproval, and a few broadcast boos could be heard from the ashamed of the studio. That's actual blue-blooded of you, Stewart said with abundant sarcasm. But let's be absolute here. Best of your so-called activism is aloof Twitter posts and photo ops. It's performative nonsense advised to accumulate you in the headlines. Performative nonsense. Shia's composure assuredly absurd and her voice rose with 18-carat anger. I've donated millions of dollars to causes I believe in. I've acclimated my Belvedere to raise awareness about issues that matter. I've put my money area my aperture is repeatedly. What except you done except profit off added people's misfortunes by turning them into punchlines? I provide commentary on important issues, Stewart replied defensively. I advise people understand what's accident in the world by breaking it bottomward in means they can relate to. You apish aggregate and everyone. Cher advance back. You breach down politicians, celebrities, ordinary people who are aloof aggravating to animate their lives. You've congenital your absolute career on negativity and cynicism. And now you want to sit actuality and catechism my relevance. At atomic ashamed bodies see my name, they accessory it with music, with movies, with ball that brings them joy. Ashamed they see your name, what do they anticipate of? A Absathian man who makes fun of anybody else's problems. The audience was now above board axis against Stewart. What had started as uncomfortable murmurs had become audible expressions of abutment for Cher. A few bodies could be heard saying, "That's right," and acquaint him Cher. Stewart looked about nervously, clearly realizing that his advance to embarrass his bedfellow had backfired spectacularly. "Look," Stewart said, aggravating to regain some affinity of control. "I think your demography this way too personally. This is aloof television, Cher. It's entertainment. Nobody's aggravating to hurt your animosity here. Entertainment." Cher laughed. But there was no action in the sound. "You anticipate base your guests on animate television is entertainment. You anticipate aggravating to tear down someone's activity assignment for a few cheap laughs is aloof controllable fun? Let me tell you something, Jon. Absolute entertainers lift bodies up. They accomplish bodies feel better about themselves and their lives. What you do is the exact opposite." Stewart's face was now absolutely red. He had acutely absent any pretense of being in ascendancy of the interview, and his desperation was acceptable added accessible by the second. "I anticipate you're being incredibly unfair," he said, his voice rising. "I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities, and none of them except ever reacted like this. Maybe the problem isn't with my questions. Maybe the problem is that you can't handle any criticism whatsoever." "Criticism?" Cher stood up from her chair, aerial over Stewart's desk. "There's a difference between accepted criticism and what you've been accomplishing actuality tonight. Criticism is constructive. It's based on facts and delivered with respect. What you've been accomplishing is aloof mean-spirited attacks advised to accomplish yourself look clever at my expense." The audience erupted in applause. Several people stood up, giving Cher a standing ovation, alike admitting the account was far from over. Stewart looked about in panic, acutely borderline of how to regain control of his own show. "Sit down, please," Stewart said weakly, gesturing toward Cher's chair. "We still accept more to discuss." "More to discuss?" Cher remained standing, her presence commanding the absolute studio. "What more could you possibly appetite to discuss, Jon? You've already fabricated it bright that you anticipate my career is over, my activism is fake, and my art is meaningless. What's left? Do you appetite to insult my appearance next? Accomplish fun of my age, attack my family? Now you're aloof being dramatic," Stewart said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Dramatic?" Cher's voice abounding with aphoretic laughter. "You ambuscade me on animate television, spend 20 account aggravating to abort my reputation, and I'm actuality affecting for calling you out on it. You apperceive what's dramatic, Jon? A developed man who makes his active by blowing bodies who are brave abundant to put themselves out there and actualize article meaningful." The audience was now absolutely on Cher's side. Bodies were auspicious her every word, and the few actual Stewart supporters seemed to accept been won over by her amorous defense. Alike some of the camera operators could be seen nodding in acceding with her words. Stewart fabricated one after most atrocious attempt to deliver the situation. "Look, I think we've gotten off on the amiss bottom here. Why don't we alpha over? I'll ask you about your new projects. We can accept a nice conversation." Cher looked at him with her admixture of benevolence and disgust. "Start over. You anticipate you can aloof reset after assuming your accurate colors? You think you can pretend to be respectful now afterwards spending bisected and are trying to abase me? That's not how it works, Jon. You don't get to be cruel and again ask for a duva ashamed it doesn't go the way you planned." Stewart's face had gone from red to anemic as he realized the abounding admeasurement of his miscalculation. The flat admirers was now above board adverse join him, and Cher showed no signs of abatement down. If anything, she seemed to be gaining momentum. With every exchange. "You know what the absolute tragedy is here, Jon?" Cher continued, her articulation carrying across the bashful studio. "You had a platform to do article meaningful. You had the befalling to accept real conversations with absorbing people, to analyze important topics, to maybe even affect your audience. Instead, you chose to use it as a weapon to tear people down. That's not fair, Stewart protested weakly. I've done affluence of meaningful interviews. I've covered important stories. Accept you. Cher challenged him. Or accept you aloof found more adult means to apish things you don't understand. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've spent your absolute career ambuscade abaft irony and acrimony instead of agreeable with the world in any honest way. The audience murmured their agreement. Addition in the back shouted, she's right. Stewart looked to join his producers off camera, clearly acquisitive for some affectionate of intervention, but they seemed as frozen as anybody abroad in the studio. I think your actuality absolutely unreasonable, Stewart said, his articulation cracking slightly. This is my show. These are my questions. If you don't like the format, maybe you shouldn't accept agreed to come on. Your show. Cher's eyebrows raised in apish surprise. Oh, I see. So, because it's your appearance that gives you the right to amusement your guests about you want, that's your alibi for actuality a bully. Well, let me acquaint you article about bullies, Jon. Eventually, someone stands up to them. The admirers erupted again, and this time, the applause lasted about 30 seconds. Stewart sat behind his desk, attractive abate and smaller as Cher connected to belfry over him, both absolutely and figuratively. You appetite to apperceive what I anticipate your real problem is? Cher asked, her articulation now calm but cutting. I anticipate you're jealous. I anticipate you attending at bodies like me, bodies who've absolutely created something abiding and it makes you angry because you apperceive you never will. So you try to accompany us bottomward to your akin by convincing anybody that annihilation we've done matters. That's ridiculous, Stewart said. But his abnegation articulate alveolate even to his own ears. Is it? Cher apprenticed on. When was the aftermost time you created something that will outlive you, Jon? When was the aftermost time you made something that bodies will still care about 50 years from now? I've got songs that accept been played at weddings and funerals for decades. I've got movies that bodies still quote. What do you have? A agglomeration of YouTube clips of you being beggarly to your guests. Stewart's mouth opened and bankrupt like a angle out of water. He had no acknowledgement because they both knew she was right. The audience knew it, too, and their silence was deafening. You apperceive what the saddest part is. Cher continued, her articulation now filled with 18-carat pity. You could have been remembered as Addition who used humor to accompany bodies together, who helped his admirers accept complex issues, who animated the discourse. Instead, you'll be remembered as the guy who anticipation actuality atrocious was the same thing as actuality clever. I anticipate we should blanket this up, Stewart said desperately, extensive for his note cards. We charge to go to commercial. Oh no, Cher said firmly. You capital to have this conversation, so let's have it. You brought me on your appearance to embarrass me, to accomplish me attending absurd in front of your audience, but the only person who looks absurd actuality is you. Stewart looked about frantically, but there was boilerplate to run. His own audience had angrier join him. His guest had absolutely destroyed his credibility, and the cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of his humiliation. I never advised to embarrass you, Stewart said weakly. Then what absolutely did you intend? Cher demanded. What was the point of asking me ashamed my aftermost hit song was? What was the point of calling my activism performative? What was the point of suggesting I should footfall abreast for younger artists? If that wasn't meant to embarrass me, again what was it? Stewart had no answer. He sat there in silence, finally compassionate that he had completely misjudged both his bedfellow and his audience. You apperceive what, Jon? Cher said, her articulation abatement slightly. I actually feel apologetic for you because this is what you've alleged to do with your life. You've alleged to be the being who tears others bottomward instead of building them up, and that's activity to be your legacy. The flat was absolutely quiet now. Alike the camera operators had stopped moving. Anybody was cat and mouse to see how this aberrant confrontation would end. I anticipate, Cher said, acrimonious up her purse from beside the bedfellow chair. That I've said aggregate I charge to say here. Wait, Stewart alleged out as she started to airing away. We can't aloof end like this. We accept to accomplishment the interview. Cher angry ashamed to face him one aftermost time. The account is over, Jon. You concluded it the moment you decided to advance me instead of accepting a conversation. You capital to make television. Well, congratulations. This will absolutely be television. People remember. And with that, she absolved off the stage, abrogation Stewart sitting alone behind his board as the admirers gave her another clap continuing ovation. The cameras connected rolling as Stewart sat there in abashed silence, finally realizing the abounding consequence of what had just happened. The appearance went to commercial, but the accident was already done. In aloof 30 minutes, Cher had completely dismantled Stewart's approach to interviewing, apparent his approach for what they absolutely were, and labered him looking a bait and added petty than anyone could accept imagined. It was a masterclass in how to handle a hostile interviewer, and it became the moment that authentic both of their careers in completely altered ways. So there you have it. The absurd adventure of how Cher angry the tables on Jon Stewart and absolved off his appearance afterwards, one of the most atomic confrontations in television history. What do you think? Should host be accustomed to ambuscade their guests like this? Or did Cher do exactly the appropriate affair by continuing up for herself? Let me apperceive in the comments below.
Thank you for watching my video.